All right, good morning, Anaheim. I'm Sergeant Brian Janoka. As you can see, everybody's favorite Sergeant Brian Pacwa is not here today. He's in training. Please don't turn the channel just because he's not here. I'm gonna try to be as funny as I can to make up for that. So we're gonna change things on our virtual Coffee with the Cop a little bit going forward. When we first started this, these had gone kind of long because everybody was quarantined and watching Netflix all day and all that stuff. And now that things are kind of getting back to normal, we're going to make these segments a little bit shorter, and we're going to cut right to the chase to try to inform everybody about the different things that we do here at the police department and answer any questions that you guys have. So obviously, we're here today in our forensics lab. And I am with our forensics supervisor,
Steve Gardner,
and one of our forensic specialists,
Jeanette Torres.
And so the three of us are going to, probably in 15 or 20 minutes, try to bring everybody up to speed on some of the realities of our crime scene investigators, what they do that's different than what you see on television, which is probably quite a bit. So we're going to get started right away. So we'll start with Steve. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at the police department.
So as far as my history, I've worked in law enforcement since 1990. I worked first for the Fullerton Police Department for about 9 years. I spent about 18 years at Whittier Police Department, and then the last 4.5 here at Anaheim. I'm currently the forensic supervisor here. The majority of my day now is spent doing administrative type tasks. I don't respond into the field very often. Normally, if I'm going to go in the field, it's for a homicide investigation or if somebody has a specific problem that they need some help with. And
Jeanette, tell us a little bit about what you do here.
So I'm a forensic specialist too, and how I started my career was that I started as a police cadet here at the Anaheim Police Department in 2011. And in 2014, I got a position as a part-time forensic specialist here in the detail. And before my year probation was up, I got promoted to full-time forensic specialist. And then I have been doing it since, and I just got promoted from forensic specialist 1 to forensic specialist 2, which is the difference is basically we look at fingerprint comparison and we testify on fingerprints in court.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to talk more with Jeanette in just a couple minutes. But right now, Steve has some things here in front of us that he's going to explain and kind of run through exactly what some of these items do for us in investigations.
So one of the big things that we're able to accomplish here at the Anaheim Police Department is processing evidence for fingerprints. On this side over here, I have a bunch of different items that we use for processing for fingerprints. This is a chemical called DFO. I'm going to butcher the name here, diazofluorine 9-1. It's a powder which we mix with some carriers to turn it into a liquid, and then we can dip it on any paper products or other non-porous items. This is indane which is similar to DFO. This is ninhydrin crystals. The ninhydrin is also a crystal which is going to be mixed with some liquid chemicals and dipped into paper.
And what do those do?
So the ninhydrin will turn fingerprints purple on paper products, and the DFO sometimes will have a purplish hue to it, but its real trick is that when you hit it with an alternate light source, it will glow in the dark. And we've got some examples of the DFO that we can show a little bit later.
And that's basically in a nutshell to find fingerprints on
paper products.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And then everybody's heard about super glue, processing fingerprints with super glue on the old MacGyver shows. Got a bottle of super glue here, which we use in a chamber back there. We heat up the super glue, turns it into a fume, and then that lands on any type of a hard, non-porous object, and will turn the fingerprints white. And then we also have just standard black fingerprint powders, which we apply with brushes, or we've got magnetic powder, which we apply with a magnet.
Interesting. Okay, so kind of with that said, Jeanette, actually, I have a couple questions first, and then I think questions are going to start coming in if they haven't already. What advice would you give someone who wants to get into the field of forensic science?
Honestly, I would say to get your foot in the door would probably be volunteering or being somewhat as a police cadet. You would have to get your foot in the door, just that way you can actually be a police cadet in different details, and if it's one of the details you want to be in is forensics, then you will have that hands-on experience to go with us along to crime scenes to see if this is what exactly you want to do and pursue as a career.
So kind of with that said, we did have an email question come in early from Sunny H, who wanted to know if there's a way, and I can give you my opinion on this, but seeing a deceased body for the first time, what advice would you give someone? How do you deal with it? How would did it bother you? Kind of stuff.
To be honest, we're all human beings, so we're gonna have emotions, but you have to be able to keep your own emotions and separate that from what you're doing, because you have a job to do at the end of the day. And basically, you have to be able to work around that body for X amount of hours and also tolerate the types of smells, because sometimes it's very gruesome and that body has been there for days and it's over summer. So
yeah, so for people, and I always say this with police officers, people who want to be cops, but also people who want to get in forensics, know what you're getting into before you get into this career, because like she said, the word gruesome, unfortunately some of what we see is. Another question, and this will morph into what I wanted to ask you. We had a question about what kind of PPE that you wear at a crime scene, and I wanted to expand on that and just ask you to walk us through what you do when you get sent to a crime scene, from the very beginning, from when you get the call here in the office to when you're out at the scene, what you do, what you see, and everything.
okay. So basically, my day goes that a call comes in from dispatch. They dispatch me to a certain location that an officer is requesting for forensics assistance. So I get the information, I pull up the call, I look at the summary to kind of inform myself what I'm going to expect to see when I arrive on scene. I get to the location and I speak with the officer that's there. He or she briefs me on what is the circumstances, the scene, and what they see, and what needs to be processed. And then we walk the crime scene together. I obviously have my gloves on, I have a mask on while this is all going on, and I'm writing down my notes, what I'm obviously seeing, for me to process, potentially for evidentiary value. Then after that, I take photographs to document the crime scene. And after that, I swab for possible DNA for things that obviously could be possibly left by or touched by a suspect. And after that, then I would dust for fingerprints, whether it's using magnetic fingerprint powder or black fingerprint powder. And I'll dust certain surfaces that are usable for finding fingerprints. And after that, if there's anything left behind by a suspect, I'll collect it, bring it back to the lab here once I clear from the scene, and process it further or book it into evidence.
How about with DNA stuff?
For DNA, we would
What do you look for?
I look for anything that's obviously left behind by the suspect. And if there's anything that basically is like, I guess, DNA processing, it would be like processing anything that's blood, saliva, anything that is actually left at the scene.
Hey, we have some questions coming in already, and I think kind of going along this, Diane89 is asking about, you're talking about getting into being a forensics tech. What kind of education is needed for that? Is there any education needed at all?
So there's no hard and fast requirement. We aren't regulated like police officers are through post. So it's almost left up to each individual department to decide what their minimum qualifications are. Having said that, I will say though that when we have an open recruitment for a forensic specialist, almost everybody that applies has a bachelor's degree at the minimum. And we've had people with doctorates apply for these positions. So I would say you're at the minimum, you're going to want a bachelor's degree in some sort of a science, probably, whether it's biology or chemistry. A lot of what we do relates to biology, whether it's the forming of fingerprints and body fluids that are able to leave fingerprints, how to develop them. So I'd go with a biology or chemistry type degree. And then if you, like Jeanette said, if you can get some experience somewhere as a police cadet or another position within a police department, that's helpful. Beyond the forensic part of the job, you've got almost a different language that we have to speak here. You need to know radio codes. When you're driving a car, you need to know how to write a police report. It's not necessarily the same as writing a term paper. You need to know criminal law. Is this going to be a felony crime or a misdemeanor? Because that's going to change probably how you process the scene. So knowing these other types of things beyond forensics is important also.
Hey, Dree Day on Facebook mentioned something here that kind of caught my attention when you're talking about the different language. He says blood spatter.
Oh, yes.
Is that like the most common mistake people make all the time?
Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
TV as well. Okay, what's the difference? Tell people what blood spatter is, whereas not.
Blood spatter, I would have to say that literally it's just a lot of blood, and it's interpreted by basically a criminalist. So we don't do the interpretation, but we document the blood spatter.
As opposed to blood splatter, which is what you'll
Yes.
hear on TV. Now, since we're
Yes.
talking about that, I'll leave it to either of you. You're at the crime scenes more. What do you watch? Do you watch CSI? Do you watch NCIS?
I do, and I always get that at crime scenes. Hey, how long is, that DNA that you collected? Will I find out who that belongs to?
Right.
And honestly, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work in the next commercial break that I find out who that belongs to, because it takes months. At first, it took at least 3 months, but I think they're so back up to right now because of the high crime going on. I believe it's around 8 months from crime lab to give us a turnaround on if that possible DNA comes back to anyone.
Are there any other huge differences you see between television and reality in your job?
I do. I mean, we know where the light switches are at. We don't work in the dark, so we turn on the light switches to actually process the scene. But also, the turnaround is obviously longer, and it's not that short span.
Got it. Normally, and of course, in certain cases, we can expedite that if we need to.
Yes. Also, fingerprints, they're never like you see on TV or in movies that you see this perfect fingerprint collected. It's never like that in real life. We're working with bits and pieces.
I like the screens they have that look like windows, but they just swipe and pull up everyone's information in 3 seconds, and it tells them the bad guy's favorite color and everything. And
Yeah.
I have to explain to my family many times that that's not what it looks like in our forensic lab.
Yeah,
That's
not at all.
I saw that Sunny H, who sent in that question's watching, and he says thank you for answering that.
Yeah, you bet.
Also, there's a couple of questions in here. One's from Diana, and then Yvette said, hey, I wish I could have done this when I was younger. And Diana wants to know, what's the oldest person you have? Is there any?
Here's your answer.
Is there an age requirement?
Apparently not. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
This is
I
awkward
might
now.
be the oldest one in the room here.
Yeah.
No, well, you have to be 18 to get hired. That would be the minimum. But we don't have a limit at the top end, I don't think, unless PERS, the retirement system, has some sort of a limit. We don't.
Yeah, I don't think it's like getting hired as a police officer. I think with forensics, for whoever that was, it Yvette.
Yvette said she wished she would have done this when she was younger.
It's probably not too late. Yeah. I don't think they really, when you're hiring someone, you don't base anything on how old someone is.
No.
So Yvette, if it's not too late, give it a shot.
I see we have a couple people watching. Quick shout outs real quick to Dominique from Platt College is watching.
Great.
And she's been watching some of our shows. And then Kate is also watching. We had last time one of our trivia contest winners was Kate.
Oh, we need to get a trivia question.
Speaking of the trivia questions.
Who has that, Jeanette?
I do.
Let's do this one for Facebook, right? The Facebook trivia question?
Okay, this is for Facebook.
this is what we're giving away, right?
It's mug that's just like the one I have right here. This one's wrapped up, so you know that it's safe.
Awesome. So my question to you would be, what is phenolphthalein used for?
There you go. Don't try to Google it because you won't spell it correctly.
Yes.
That's right.
You'll have to know the answer to this.
Hey, Yvette says it's too late. She turns 51 in 2 weeks, but I don't. She's
Okay.
still
Oh, that's fine.
still come to work, right?
I'll be working after I'm 51.
Yeah.
I'm this close to 50, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
What other questions do we have coming in?
So there was we had a question that came in from Alice, and you kind of touched on it before, but do you need to be a police officer to be a forensics tech?
No. Then that changed right about the time I started getting into the field, so I would say early 90s. Prior to that, it was mostly police officers doing the job, and then it slowly transitioned in the early 90s to civilian. And
Yeah, so on that note, again, talking about the differences between television and reality, in Orange County at least, and I think most places, forensics specialists, crime scene investigators, unlike on TV, they do not carry guns, they don't chase bad guys, they don't, unless I'm missing something, they don't interview
No.
suspects. They're for evidence collection and analysis and such, but they don't carry guns. They don't have the same powers of arrest that police officers have. It's a different job classification. So
Yeah.
Yep.
hopefully that clears up a few things.
We have not gotten an answer yet on Facebook for
I know.
what phenolphthalein
You
is.
stumped
So
them. That's the
Very
we're
first
sending
time.
them in.
They're failing this question. Hey.
That joke
Is that, are you
provided
our Packwell replacement today?
No.
by,
Hey,
that
we
joke
did,
provided by Shane Carringer, our PIO, for anyone who's
I did see a couple. So there was a comment on Instagram this past week when we did the promos, and then Lori also mentioned this too. Do we ever do tours of our lab, or do you do any
Good
sort of
question.
like virtual training or virtual tours or anything like that? Or
we have during the open house. We have an open house. We used to pre-COVID
Yes.
for the police department, and we would bring people through the forensic bureau during the open house. And we also participate in the National Night Out every year. So we bring a bunch of our equipment out, and
Yeah, so for those who don't know, National Night Out is every August, once a year. Every police department in the nation pretty much participates. We always do one. You can find it in our social media on Instagram or Facebook. And we would encourage anyone, really, if your people who are watching are interested in this, should come to National Night Out. And every detail in the department has a booth or a table set up. The people who work there, we all three of us go to National Night Out. So we're there in person to answer questions, and it's a great couple hours. If people can come out, it's usually at a local park.
Hey, Facebook's asking to repeat the question. They had missed the question, so if we could ask it one more time.
So what is phenolphthalein used for?
Phenolphthalein. What is it used for?
some people are saying preserved dead bodies, but I don't think that's not what it is.
No.
We do have a comment on here and a question about, do you ever have volunteers or maybe even college interns?
Oh, interns. I was asked that as well. Internships here. Yes or
We
no?
don't have interns. We do have a cadet that is assigned to our bureau, and we focus most of our energy on the cadet program here. So if you wanted to be a part of the forensic bureau without having been a forensic specialist, then being a police cadet would be the route you'd want to go.
It's a great answer.
Some departments do, but
Yeah, this department in particular, our police cadets generally are between 18 and 21 years old. And here at Anaheim PD, we have cadets working in almost every detail. So we have cadets working everywhere to get all kinds of experience. So it's a great start.
That's
For
how I
those-
started.
There you go. Me too.
See?
3 of our current forensic specialists
Different
were
decades.
former cadets.
I was a little before, and I was actually a police cadet with the captain of this bureau, who's standing behind the camera. You don't see him, but we were actually cadets together back in. It's not important. What's the next question?
I just saw in here, Nicole asked, do you ever have any regrets to get in forensics? I mean, sometimes we talked about it earlier. You see these horrific crime scenes. It's a lot of probably negativity.
It's a great
Do you ever
question.
regret it? And you probably work weekends, holidays, all night,
Yep.
middle of the night, weird
Yeah.
hours.
I don't have any
I
regrets
don't
at all,
either.
and
This
it's
is what I
been
love doing.
30 plus years at this point, so I still enjoy it. It can be tough getting a call at 1 a.m. when you're fast asleep and you have to come into work, but
Yeah.
it's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, and like I've talked about before, this job, and you both know it, you will see and experience things that you'll never unsee or be able to forget, and that's just part of this career.
The
So
line of work we obviously wanted to go.
I think
to.
we got an answer.
Oh,
Patty
okay.
Zavala says it's a blood indicator.
is that true, sir?
Yes.
There you go. Patty
Yeah.
just won herself a
Good job,
coffee cup.
Patty.
Patty, get a hold of us so we can get you your mug. Please send us a message.
Yeah, it's a presumptive blood test, so it will change colors if it comes in contact with blood.
Yep.
And it's not a laxative, right?
It is
Somebody put
not.
laxative.
It's not a laxative.
No, it's
You
not.
probably don't want to eat it.
Not
It's
as-
really bad to eat,
Not as
right?
far as you know.
Right for that?
What about an easier trivia question for Instagram? Since we're
We'll have one more trivia question, and we might wrap this. What do you want to talk about any of this equipment that you got out in front of you, real quick?
Well, we have our gloves, obviously, we always use.
Yes.
And we have certain ALSs, alternate light sources, that we use for common actual chemicals if we use to processing for fingerprints or fluorescent powders. And also over here, this is the actual, another ALS that we have. So these are just flashlight ALSs, alternate light sources, but we actually have one for our lab that we use on the daily when we're processing here in the lab. And these were probably out in the field.
And how about the microscopes and the?
So the microscope,
Obviously, we know what it does. What would you use it for?
so the microscope we'll use obviously to look at either fingerprints or trace evidence, which are very tiny little particles or pieces of evidence. And over here is our very expensive.
Don't drop it.
Yes, I know.
The boss is
Very
Don't
expensive.
drop
Yeah, this will be. If I drop it, I'd be in really big trouble. But this is our Faro machine. And what it does is a 360 picture of our crime scene. So it diagrams it, measurements, and takes a lot of photos of our crime scene. We normally bring this out at major crime scenes. So at homicides, this is what we would use.
And then speaking of, how often, I'm surprised nobody's asked this, but how often do you have to testify in court on all the things that we just talked about?
So I testified about 5 times last year.
Okay.
So it's not that many, but we do go out to testify, whether we are testifying on stuff that we collect as in DNA or fingerprints.
And then just something that I remember from my detective days, the ballistics lab is separate from what you guys do. Is that
Correct.
still the case?
We have a little bit of interaction with firearms, and that's Jeanette. She's the only one at the department that is able to and qualified to enter cartridge casings into a national database.
Okay.
Yes.
And that database is called, I guess that could be our next trivia question. I don't know.
Yeah, what is that database called?
There you go. There's our question. That was easy.
For Instagram.
Okay, for Instagram, the database for firearms.
To input.
you want the acronym or the whole name?
The acronym, please.
The acronym.
Because I know the acronym, but I don't know the whole name. So
You sure?
yeah, I think so.
Hey, well, while we're doing that, we got Arena Police 2020 is watching us from the Netherlands.
Wow.
Worldwide again. I mean, we
So
need to
what
know where
time
people
is
are
it
from.
over there right
I
now?
don't know. What time is it?
Outstanding.
What time is it in the Netherlands? But if you're, tell us where you're from. We want to hear where people are from. all
That
the
could
time.
be,
That's
yeah, Germany.
awesome.
That might be now the new farthest away place that we've had some.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's another question on here from Lori talking about DNA. How
Okay.
big or small of a sample do you need of something to get DNA?
Great question.
I mean, do you really need a sample?
Q-tip.
Does there need to be an item, or sometimes can it just be something you can't even see?
Yeah, so Jeanette kind of talked about it earlier. We can take something that the suspect left behind, whether it's blood or saliva, cigarette butts, chewing gum, or we can go for touch DNA, which is invisible, and we're just guessing where somebody might have touched an object, whether it's a doorknob, a steering wheel, something like
Things
that.
that have been manipulated at a crime scene.
Right. And we just rub, we use some sterile water,
Like
put a
kind
drop or two onto a sterile Q-tip and rub it on the surface.
Here's a long-standing debate amongst cops and detectives. Is that a buccal swab or a buccal swab?
buckle.
It's buckle. I'm going to go with buckle.
In court, it is specifically named as buckle.
There's been many debates in
It's
cubicles
just got settled.
in this
Yes.
building.
There you go.
Definitive.
Buckle.
Buckle.
Buckle swab.
All
Okay, we have
right.
a trivia winner.
Oh, we do. Oh,
Alice O'Keefe, 75.
and what did Alice say?
Nibin.
Nibin, that's right.
She's correct.
She probably had some help, right?
Alice won the second coffee cup. All right,
All
All right,
well
Alice,
done,
get a hold of
Alice.
us. Hey, we do have people in Montgomery County, Maryland, watching.
Okay, it's not
Awesome.
the Netherlands, but
Awesome.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Hi. Great from Maryland.
Cool.
Okay.
New York, we got New York. Hi, Lori.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. New York.
All right, I think that might. Well, we're at 30 minutes, so we'll probably wrap this up. Unless there's more questions or anyone has. That's great.
Do you want to, on the way out, just do a quick
Yeah.
demo of
Demos.
the handprint light?
We can try. We're gonna have to dim the lights, I guess.
Sure,
So
so-
bear with us. We're gonna try to do a quick demo.
And this is an example of DFO, which was the chemical, if you remember, that we used to process paper. Previously, I put my handprint on paper and processed it with DFO. We're going to go ahead and dim the lights. I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll place a barrier filter in front of the camera so that hopefully you can see the, yes, the lights are right there. Hopefully you can see the fingerprint. Let's see here. Walk around on this side. You guys will have to help me out and let me know. If you want to hold this, and we'll leave it out for a second. We'll put this here.
Instagram's going to get a first
Is it
Facebook
okay?
peeps.
So it's using
you-
an alternate light source right now with an orange
Should just look blue.
lens.
And place the lens in front of the camera.
There you go.
Can you see the fingerprint?
Oh, yeah. I can see it on here.
Is it showing up on the
Yep.
camera? Okay. And if you remove the barrier filter, it should just kind of disappear. And let's see here.
Facebook.
Should just be a plain white or light background.
Oh, there it is.
So that's an example of how we process paper. And at this point, we would take a photograph of the fingerprint. We would do all of this on a copy stand and take a digital photograph, and then we can search it through the computer system.
And you said that's a spray that you spray on?
Yeah, it comes as a powder, and we mix it with some sort of a alcohol-based carrier and turn it into a liquid.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Like I talked about before, we're going to start doing these probably every 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully every 2 weeks, a little bit shorter. Not sure where the next one's going to be, but we'll see everyone again in about 2 weeks. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jeanette.
You're welcome.
Great job, and we'll see everybody in a couple weeks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.